What's up, Bodyweight Warriors, and welcome back to another video. And today I wanted to discuss the topic of density training and specifically how we can apply it to bodyweight training, because it's maybe a concept that's used outside of that, more in like the strength and conditioning realm, whether that's CrossFit or just traditional strength and conditioning in sports for teams. I think it's actually got some really great application for both beginners and advanced in bodyweight training. I've personally been using it myself. I use it quite a bit with clients, and you guys have asked in recent vlogs why I've been doing it. So I kind of want to explain that. I'm not going to go massively into the detail as to why we want to use density training, because ultimately it's just a nice tool to have. Straight sets, normal training is perfectly good, perfectly effective. Density training is just nice if we want to kind of squeeze our training in. Maybe we're short on time over the week. It allows us to do a lot of work in a short period of time. That is what density training is. There's also kind of a fun competition element to it itself. We've got a time, we want to do so many reps, and it's kind of a bit of a race to see if you can beat your last record, or if you're doing it with other people, beat them as well. Really, there's kind of two instances where I would think that this is a useful method. Number one is building up work capacity. If perhaps we're coming back to training, such as myself after an injury, I'm using density training at the moment to increase that work capacity and just get used to doing a little bit more work. This can actually be applied on the opposite end of the spectrum as well. Say we've just unlocked, a one-arm chin-up, a handstand push-up, a press to handstand. We can use density training as a way of increasing the amount of reps that we do of a movement, whereas where we can't actually do maybe like sets of 2, 3, 4, or 5 reps, we can only do sets of 1. As of anything, there's many different applications and it should be applied to the individual, but I'm going to share with you now a selection of different methods that I personally like and I think are particularly useful. First up, we've got escalating density training. Now, I've actually got an entire video on this particular method, so I would recommend you check out that video. I'll link it down below. Not necessarily now. That goes into it in more detail. It also provides some examples if you want to use it. Essentially, escalating density training is where we substitute using sets for time. Usually this would be performed with 2 movements. For example, a push-up and a row. We take half the amount of max reps that we can do. Say we can do 8 reps of each of those. We do 4 reps, and then we just see how many times we can alternate back and forth between those 2 exercises in a time frame. So 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is. This starts off easy because we're doing stuff at, half the intensity that we could be doing at. But as we fatigue, that intensity gradually escalates. This one's useful more at beginner levels. I find it's more about building up that work capacity than anything else. But this doesn't necessarily mean beginner in terms of time frame. This could also be beginner when we're maybe introducing new skills or new focuses. It helps us build up that conditioning in a particular position. There's actually another example of escalating density training in a video I posted a long time back in relation to planche and front lever, and I'll link that one down below as well. The next method is kind of following on very similar train of thought, and that is an Amrap, or as many reps as possible in a certain time. This one is slightly different from escalating density training because I would generally just choose one movement and we're going to have a time frame. Generally 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes is kind of more than enough depending on the intensity of the movement. So if it's closer to that 1 rep max, maybe longer period to allow ourselves to get more work in. If it's a little bit lower, we can take a shorter rest. Kind of like normal training. If we're doing more strength-based stuff, lower rep stuff, we're going to need more sets. If we're doing higher rep stuff, we're going to need less sets. Same kind of concept applies. Very simply, we select a movement, we do as many reps as possible in the time given, we rest as we need to make sure we can still perform the movement with quality, with not too much form breakdown, but ultimately we're trying to do more reps. A couple of examples for you. Say we've got somebody who can do 1 to 2 chin-ups, they're new to the gym. Let's just not worry about sets of reps because it's kind of hard to get enough volume with just 1 to 2 reps in a set. Let's just do as many chin-ups as you can do in 10 minutes. If we can do 10, that's nice. That's on the minute every minute. But ultimately, a nice easy way to measure our progress as well and how efficient we're getting with that movement. If we stick with that 10-minute slot over the weeks, maybe do 10 the first week, and then eventually maybe we're doing 15, 16, 17 reps 4 or 5 weeks later. It's a nice way just to see like, oh look, I've improved at this movement. This equally works as well on the more advanced end of the spectrum with things like handstand push-up or press to handstand. But again, to reiterate, the important part is that we're resting as we need to still perform the exercise with sufficient quality. We shouldn't be sacrificing more reps for a massively detrimental breakdown in form. A little bit of grinding out, perfectly acceptable for this sort of method, but we don't want to massively overdo it. Next up, we kind of have the reverse to this, which is basically doing a set amount of reps in the shortest time possible. Essentially, we have a similar sort of outcome, but the intent is slightly different. Rather than time being the restricting factor, this time we're going to choose reps. We can kind of stick to roughly what we'd have in something like Brilliant's chart. So that is our intensity chart. Maybe if we're doing strength moves, we choose between 10 and 20 total accumulated reps. If we're going for maybe a little bit more strength, slash hypertrophy sort of stuff, maybe 20 to 40. And if it's kind of like pure hypertrophy sort of ish style, maybe we go closer to that 40 rep sort of mark. And this is important because it matters more than the first one. With the first one, because we're using time as the limiting factor, then really we become self-limiting again with how hard we push ourselves. When we're using like our target is reps in the shortest time possible, if we choose something that's our 1 rep max and we say we're going to do 40 of it, we are going to absolutely smash ourselves for that short time period. It's not necessarily what we want. Again, this works really nicely for things like developing your handstand push-up if you've only got 1 to 2 reps, developing your chin-up if you've only got 1 to 2 reps. It's a really nice way of taking 1 to 2 of something to 3 or 4 or 5 or something, because in bodyweight training, we don't have the same linear scale as we would with weight training. We can't just add a little bit more weight each time. This method, we're using rest to adjust how much intensity there is in the movement, if that makes sense. And finally, as I mentioned kind of more towards the start of this video, we have EMON, or every minute on the minute. Something, again, more popular in the CrossFit sort of space, but quite applicable to bodyweight training. This is kind of an in-between of the prior 2 examples. Usually we're going to have a set rep range that we're going to try and hit. We also have kind of a set rest period every minute on the minute. And then we have that set time frame to complete it in, whether that's 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is. I would say this particular method works well with lower rest periods, because if you think the more reps we do, the more of that minute we're going to eat up with the actual training and the less rest we're going to get. But again, because we've got sub-maximal rest, we are going to need to use a sub-maximal intensity of exercise. Much the same benefits as the rest of them. It's about improving work capacity, improving efficiency of movement, and kind of taking maybe from going 1 to 2 of something to 3, 4, or 5 of something. Equally, it can be used well with things like planche or front lever. We can do like a 10, 15 second hold of a planche or a front lever on the minute, every minute for a certain amount of time. It works very, very nicely in these instances. So that's basically it. 4 hopefully useful methods you can apply to yourself. Get a little bit creative with it, but try it out. I really like time restricted training, partly because the busier I've got, it just helps me simplify my training. I know if I go to the gym, I can be done in 45 or 60 minutes with my strength work using some of these methods. I don't use it for all my work, certainly, and I only really use it in certain phases. It works well when we're trying to build up that work capacity, maybe an accumulation phase, maybe we're trying to build a bit of infrastructure, some hypertrophy. It's not going to work as well towards that maximum effort sort of level when we're trying to get really strong. As with everything, there's a time and place for it. But I hope that helps. If you are going to give it a go, please let me know in the comments section down below. Whilst you're down there, you can also hit that thumbs up button if you want to support the channel. And right next to it is that subscribe button if you want to join the Bodyweight Warrior tribe and don't miss out on any more future videos. But that's basically been it for this week, guys. I'll catch you in the next episode. Have a strong week and